Hey everyone, welcome back to the History Discussion channel. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating and challenging chapters of American military history, the Vietnam War. Specifically, we're looking at how Vietnamese military tactics not only countered, but sometimes outright dictated the way our forces had to fight. This isn't just a story about conflict, it's a deep lesson in adaptation, strategy, and the unexpected ways our army found itself responding to a new kind of warfare. Let's get right into it. Back in the 1960s and early 1970s, the Vietnam War was already well underway. For many of us in the United States, Vietnam felt distant, but to those who served there, it was an entirely different world, both in geography and in the rules of engagement. Our army, used to conventional warfare and technological superiority, quickly realized Vietnam would require a completely new approach. From the very start, Vietnamese commanders understood that fighting head-to-head against the American military's sheer firepower wasn't an option. Instead, they relied on something far more elusive: guerrilla tactics, mobility, and an ability to melt away into the jungle just when we thought we had them cornered. American soldiers soon learned that every step outside the base could be fraught with danger. The enemy wasn't always visible. Sometimes the jungle itself seemed to turn against us. Booby traps, ambushes, and hidden tunnels all around. Even with helicopters, napalm, and advanced technology, our army often found itself reacting to, rather than dictating, the terms of battle. One striking example was the use of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, a vast network of paths and tunnels running through Laos and Cambodia into South Vietnam. No matter how hard we bombed or how many resources we poured in, the trail remained operational, allowing troops and supplies to keep moving south. It was a logistical masterpiece and a constant source of frustration for American commanders. But the story goes deeper than just supply lines. Vietnamese forces were masters at using the landscape to their advantage. Rivers, mountains, thick forests, they all became part of their strategy. Instead of seeking large, decisive battles, they wore our army down through attrition and unpredictability. Our soldiers could never be sure if the area was truly safe, even after a heavy sweep. Tactically, this meant our army had to adjust constantly. Patrol patterns changed. We started using smaller units, trying to move as lightly and quietly as possible. Technology like sensors, seismic detectors, and electronic surveillance were deployed, but even these had limits in the dense, humid environment. Every innovation was met with a counter-innovation. Sometimes our high-tech equipment was rendered ineffective by the simplest tricks. A false signal here, a decoy there, even simple methods of avoiding detection. This relentless adaptation and counter-adaptation turned the Vietnam War into a kind of chess match, a test of nerves, wits, and stamina. Let's take a closer look at how these shifting strategies played out on the ground. As our army adapted, new doctrines emerged. The concept of search and destroy was born from the realization that waiting for large enemy formations was futile. Instead, American units had to move through the countryside, seeking out enemy forces wherever they might be hiding. This placed immense pressure on our troops, who had to remain alert at all times, never certain if a peaceful-looking village was genuinely safe or if it masked hidden threats beneath the surface. Vietnamese forces capitalized on this uncertainty. They knew that the landscape was their greatest ally. In one village, American patrols might find nothing but silence, only to walk into an ambush the next day. The unpredictability forced our army to constantly refine its tactics and rely more heavily on local intelligence. Though even this was difficult, given the complex loyalties within rural communities. One particularly challenging aspect was the enemy's use of tunnel networks. These underground labyrinths allowed Vietnamese fighters to appear, strike, and vanish before our soldiers could respond. Tunnel rats, brave volunteers from our army, were tasked with venturing underground to clear these spaces, knowing full well the dangers that awaited below: booby traps, suffocating air, and close-quarters combat. Despite the overwhelming technological advantage on our side, it often felt like we were fighting on their terms. The Vietnamese commanders set the pace and nature of engagements, keeping our army off balance. Helicopter assaults, air mobility, and fire support bases were all innovations we brought to the table. But even those could only do so much against an opponent that seemed to know the terrain better than anyone else. Psychologically, this had a major impact on our troops. The fatigue of constant vigilance, the stress of not knowing where the next attack would come from, and the frustration of fighting an enemy that refused to play by conventional rules, all of this wore down morale. Yet, through all these challenges, American soldiers continued to adapt and persevere, learning from every encounter and sharing lessons that would shape military doctrine for years to come. This dynamic between our Army and Vietnamese forces transformed the conflict. It became a war not just of weapons and numbers, but of wits and endurance, a true test of how quickly each side could learn and evolve. Now, this raises an important question. If our Army had to constantly adapt and change the way we fought, what was the ultimate impact of these tactics on the broader course of the war? And how did Vietnamese commanders manage to keep our forces so frequently reacting, rather than taking the initiative? The answer to these questions, and the ultimate outcome of this chess match of strategies, awaits in the next chapter of our story. So make sure to follow the History Discussion channel and ring the bell to get notified about the latest episodes, alright?